and welcome back to Community Couch Time, a daily talk show where we talk about things that are important, things that are happening in our community, in our state, in this country, and internationally. Oftentimes, the topics that we discuss are ones that others aren't talking about. And the question is, why aren't we? Hello, and welcome back to Community Couch Time. Today is an exciting and wonderful day. We have two amazing, wonderful, beautiful human beings who are, that and also what we would call white co-conspirators, or some folks know as white allies. There's a distinction. We'll get to that later. But I'd like to invite Dr. Tricia Gallagher-Geurtsen to share a little bit about yourself. Tell us about you.
Thanks for having us. I'm a leader of the Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum Consortium, and I am down here in San Diego and lecture at UC San Diego and also lecture at UC Santa Cruz. I'm the co-chair of the Ethnic Studies Advisory Committee for San Diego Unified School District, and so happy to be here.
I'm very happy to have you here as well. And so, Doctora Verde, Dr. Susan Green, can you share a little bit about who you are with us as well?
Hi, I'm Susan Gordon Green, and I am chair of Multicultural and Gender Studies at California State University, Chico. And I have been here for 23 years, and it has been such an incredible journey to do the curriculum work for Chicano studies, but also to be an advisor to organizations like MECHA that have a really long-standing history in the community.
I love MECHA. I'm an advisor to MECHA as well here in Los Angeles for high school, my high school MECHA. So this is a question for really both of you, and feel free to kind of just, have a discussion with one another, but with us all, regarding like what it is to be an ally and what it is to be a co-conspirator. This is for both of you.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Trish. I love your letter to white educators. So go ahead.
So there is a real difference between an ally and a co-conspirator. And the image I always have in my mind of a co-conspirator is someone who, at a protest, maybe a Black Lives Matter protest, a white person who will literally put their body in between folks of color and the police. And that's sort of what I think about in the difference between an ally and a co-conspirator. A co-conspirator takes direction from folks of color about self-determination, liberation, does a lot of stepping back, puts themselves on the line, takes some hits for the work, and self-educates, constantly recognizing what you don't know and educating yourself, trying to take labor off the shoulders of folks of color, and recognizing that our work is about destabilizing and changing the system from ground up so that white supremacy dies.
And I love what Trish had to say about co-conspirators and labor. I think that's really important, and about continuing education. That this, for me, has been a journey since the 1980s. And the terminology we use has changed. The work that we do has evolved. It has become much more complex, more nuanced, more supportive than it was in the 1980s. But one of the things that I really think about is it's about putting your labor on the table. And putting your labor on the table so that you support other people in the struggle. And so it is about that work that you do in combination with other folks. And it's what you're sometimes asked to do, but sometimes you kind of wait and see where the work is headed, and you follow along. So I think both labor and ongoing education are really important parts about being co-conspirators versus being just allies. And I posted a Black Lives Matter, thing on my Instagram. That's something really different than having a long-term lifetime commitment to changing the social structures of racism and inequality.
Thank you so much for clarifying that for all of us. It's very powerful and very important distinction. I'd like to highlight a little bit of the work that you each do, really almost like an opposite ends of the state of California. Trish, so a lot of your work that you do is across the state, but also a lot based locally in San Diego. Can you talk to us a little bit about the work that you've been involved with and who else has been involved in that work as well?
Sure. So the movement for K-12 ethnic studies in San Diego, and specifically in San Diego Unified School District, began long before I was around, right, with grassroots movements. And specifically this current push, the roots are in ARE, the Association of Raza Educators, San Diego. And so I was invited to come to sort of the kickoff meeting to push for ethnic studies in San Diego Unified, and began taking direction and doing the work to support the school board, push the school board into creating an actual ethnic studies committee to push this work, and then again moving towards pushing for graduation requirement prior to the state. And that work is ongoing, right? Because white supremacy is insidious and invisible in so many ways. And so, developing the curriculum and ensuring that it maintains fidelity to university ethnic studies department vetted ethnic studies is really key right now. And that's where we are in San Diego. So, although maybe I'm a co-chair, really I see the movement is pushed and grown from folks in the community and what they need and what they see, and I'm taking their direction, or I intend to, in my work.
Thank you so much for doing that work and for being a co-conspirator out there with the homies in San Diego doing ethnic studies. That's great. And so, Susan, you have a very fascinating story as a Chicana studies major. Can you tell us a little bit about the trajectory and how you got to that, to be able to take those courses, and others like you, and how that's resulted in, what you do up at Chico?
Absolutely. I was very lucky in that I had Chicano studies in Minnesota in an all-white suburb in the 1980s. I had Chicano studies as part of my Spanish class and learned how to speak Spanish reading La Prensa from the west side of St. Paul. We read La Amenaza de las Pesticidas from the United Farm Workers. So we learned Spanish through Chicano studies. And so it was really integrated into the community. And it wasn't Castilian. It wasn't in some isolated Iberian Peninsula. It was right here in the neighborhood and in the communities that we grew up in. And so I was very fortunate that my high school teacher said, you should check out Chicano studies at the University of Minnesota. And I did. And so that is the oldest Chicano studies department in the Midwest. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to do my bachelor's degree there. And then I did my master's and my PhD there at the University of Minnesota as well. And we joke that, we don't normally think of Minnesota as being part of Aztlán, but we think about it as Aztlán del Norte, really del Norte. And so we're way far north. And so I was really, really lucky to be able to do that work, and that I had really good advising, and people saw that I had the intellectual drive and the curiosity and the ganas to be part of the community and to do that work, even though I was white. And so I was very lucky to be hired at Chico State. And I've really been committed up at Chico State to rural education, to making sure that the young people in rural communities have as excellent Chicano studies education as students in Los Angeles, or, like Tricia's providing in San Diego, or people providing in San Francisco, because rural students need that great education too. And they're no less deserving of a great, Chicano studies education than anybody else. And so it's been a great opportunity. I've been up here for about a quarter of a century now. And now in the CSU, we have a brand new graduation requirement in ethnic studies. And that has really been a game changer for us. And we're really excited to welcome students into our program now here up at Chico State.
I'm glad you bring that up, because I really like to promote like the pipeline, right? Getting our high school students to major in these ethnic studies and then come back and teach them. And if you don't decide to be a teacher, it's okay. Like, you can incorporate it into whatever you do, right? Broadcast media or anything in the world that you love and want to do with your life. So I wanted to ask you, like, the area of interest within ethnic studies that is like exciting to you. I know that I got to see Susan as a guest speaker talking about like pachucos and pachucas in LA. I don't know if that's the area you want to share, but I'd be happy to hear it again if you did. So I'd like to know from each of you.
Zoot suit shirt. Oh, I love zoot suits. All things zoot suits are great. I went to graduate school. First of all, thank goodness someone took me aside and said, "Where are you going to graduate school?" Because my first question was, what is graduate school? And if it hadn't been for those professors in Chicano studies saying, this is what graduate school is, and here's how you get there, I wouldn't be here. And so I thought I was going to be an immigration and labor historian. I actually studied the meatpacking industry in Minnesota, particularly poultry packing, and looking at how Mexican and Somali immigrants were interacting in the meatpacking industry in Minnesota. But then I read Mauricio Mason's book about the Zoot Suit riots. And I went, oh, wow. And I never looked back. I have been, a Zoot Suitologist along with several others in Los Angeles. The Zoot Suit has been present from the 1800s up until the present in all sorts of different communities, and what it means and why people wear it and what meanings dominant mainstream media, subscribes or ascribes to it are different, but it's fantastic. I love it. And I still get questions all the time from school districts. I get calls from parents who say that their school district wants to ban the Zoot Suit at prom, right? I know. And what can we do about it, right? That it's still, even now, being presented as gang dress, as something that hides weapons, and not a symbol of ethnic autonomy, of national beauty. So I still talk to folks all the time about the Zoot Suit because it is still a contested symbol.
Wow, it's like a stripping of the Zoot Suit in modern times. That's horrible. Yeah, I have a connection. My husband is an actor, and he has performed as El Pachuco in Zoot Suit many times with El Teatro Campesino, and he was Smiley in the last rendition here in 2017 at the Mark Taper Forum. So we got Pachucos, we got posters and everything all up around here. And Pachucas too. Actually, I have one right back here. So Trish, tell us, what is your area of interest? What is your area of expertise? What is something that you love in the realm of ethnic studies?
I can't really answer the question because honestly, I love it all. And I don't come from ethnic studies roots. I come from bilingual education, which absolutely is ethnic studies. And so, of course, I'm obsessed with understanding how language carries culture. And cultural erasure through taking away language and hybridity and translanguaging. All of those are very interesting to me because that's what I've studied. But I really, when I come to Liberated Ethnic Studies Institutes and I get to engage and hear a lesson from one of our teachers, I'm just so hungry. I'm so hungry to be educated by anything ethnic studies and the community cultural wealth of communities of color. So I don't have a favorite. I'm only drawn to language because I've spent time there, but it's so needed. And I think as a society, we're starved for the humanization that ethnic studies brings and for looking in the mirror at the kind of violence that we perpetuate against folks of color. It is healing for white folks to see this and understand all the sort of empty blank spaces we've created because it's comfortable. And so I'm ravenous for ethnic studies, any type of real ethnic studies. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you for reminding us that language and, bilingualism, multilingualism is absolutely a part of ethnic studies. Yeah, that's a really important thing that I think is left out a lot, which is why we're going to have an institute on it in the near future. So lastly, I'd like to ask you to share with folks out there, other white folks who want to be co-conspirators, action steps, what can folks out there do to be a part of that work that you're all dedicated to?
Well, obviously participating in Liberated Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum Institutes whenever possible, and joining into those events like that fantastic Black History Month event this morning with Tanya Jaco and Alfonso and Erica Jones. It was just fantastic. I would recommend a book called Me and White Supremacy with Layla Saad. She has what she calls the Good Ancestor Project. There's a book, there's podcasts, and it really helps people explore on an ongoing basis their whiteness and moments when, and it's really hard to say that you've taken a pass on being white. When I did not talk with, Uncle Steve at the Thanksgiving table about either Thanksgiving or about, a political candidate or about his theories of immigration, because I just don't feel like having this conversation. And of course, BIPOC folk don't ever get to take a pass, ever. And there are plenty of times when we as white folks need to examine that we have taken a pass on talking about whiteness and having hard conversations. But, secondly, that we need not to do that. And we have to practice continually having conversations with other white folks about how we can do better, how we can be better co-conspirators for our BIPOC colleagues and for our students.
Yeah, thank you. That's very important. Thank you so much for that.
I would just, I completely agree. Those, stepping out and doing that work is so important. The work of decolonizing yourself and those around you is 24/7. It's a lot of, it's work for white folks too, because the comfortable norm that we have is easy just to sit in. There's, no need for us to do this work, right? Because our lives are so comfortable. So I think just having that disposition of caring about the lives of others and humanizing others and recognizing that and self-educating. Social media can be a really good place to find really true, strong voices to educate yourself, because it's okay to try to have those conversations, but if you don't know what to say, if you haven't, been educated or understand, what white supremacy is, if you haven't reflected on sort of the walls that you have in your mind, then you're not ready to engage in the conversation in the first place. So I would say, listen to folks of color, and really take your lead and be humble, be willing to learn with the willingness to be changed by what you hear, would be so important in this process.
Thank you. I just want to say I love you two mujeres very much. Thank you for what you do. I'm very excited to be doing this work with y'all. Sharing the sacred truth space with y'all is a beautiful thing. And so with that, goodbye in Lak'ech, Ashe, Ubuntu, Isang, Baksak.